Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. Today I'm going to talk about the most impactful films on my life that were released in 2018. The world was a different place back then, wasn't it? Let's see, where to start? We'll start with a Solo entry. Yeah, Solo. A Star Wars story. Great time, great movie. I love that movie. It's fun. I have no complaints. Well, okay, I take that back. I have one complaint. I would have loved to have seen a film directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Yeah, that would have been great, even if it was a ridiculous comedy, which I'm sure that's why they got fired. They claimed it was because, oh, they were bringing us nonsense, but it was probably going to be a great comedy like 21 Jump Street, but they wanted to take their Star Wars a little too seriously. It's weird how people take Star Wars so seriously. Not only are they just movies, but they're like campy, old school serial Buck Rogers children's movies. But I remember seeing that movie with my son, and we had a blast. We were very excited about Jon Favreau's character, who then was capped. Spoiler alert. But then when you get to the Darth Maul, like, that was not spoiled for me, and I was blown away when I saw Darth Maul, and I was like, heck yeah. It's Ray Park, voiced by Sam Worthington? No, Sam Whitmore? Sam... One of the two. Whitwer. Sam Whit... My thoughts, that's why. But Solo, I like that movie. It was a great time seeing it with my son. We had a blast. I wish we would have gotten more to continue Darth Maul's story, even though we know where it ends, but it was just great to see him on the big screen again. And it continued the tradition of every single Star Wars film having a lightsaber ignited. There is now only one Star Wars property that does not have a lightsaber ignite. But they got another season coming, so who knows? Anywho. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Avengers Infinity War, one of the greatest achievements in cinematic history. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's amazing that the Russo brothers have directed some of the greatest set-piece action films of all time, and they also directed some of the greatest ensemble comedies of all time. But I'll stress again, that is their strength. They're very good at ensemble casts, and they can handle every single character perfectly. Infinity War, by the way, is my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy film. I do very much, I mean, it's not just a Guardians of the Galaxy film, but I do consider it, among many things, to be a Guardians of the Galaxy film. And it's my favorite film that appears, that features them, that they appear in. Don't get me started on the new Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Did not care for that movie. But Infinity War, oh my gosh. I mean, just what an amazing thrill ride from beginning to end. So much fun. Us nerds got to see a guy collecting all of his little gemstones, and as a completionist myself, I was like, you know what? I remember going into that film, all I wanted was for him to get them all. I just wanted him to get all the stones, and then he could be defeated. That's fine. But I'll never forget being in that theater. Saw it with my son. We were near the front, which I'm really glad that we were kind of forced and stuck in the front rows, because, like, if you see a scary movie, you want to be in the back, because then all the jump scares, you get to see the entire crowd jump at the same time, especially a sold-out show, obviously. And obviously this was a sold-out show. We went to the first showing. But to be in that theater, and I remember when, spoiler alert, when Thor comes out of nowhere, especially, oh man, the whole Vision, Wanda, Time Stone, what's psych? I'm gonna rip it out of his forehead and kill him twice in front of your eyes. Oh, so hardcore. And Vision was one of my favorite characters, and I was very, very devastated to see him go. But he returned. And he will return again. I promise you that. He's going to come out of nowhere when we all forgot about him. But then when Thor came out of nowhere and plunged his axe into Thanos, I was like, there you go. This movie's Thor's movie. It's been about Thor this whole time. At least a third of the movie has been Thor's journey. And here he is to save the day. And then, of course, you get the "you should have gone for the head." And I couldn't believe... The moment Thanos snapped, that theater went absolutely silent. You could hear a pin drop. And I will never forget, starting with Bucky, as these characters, the sound design in this sequence is phenomenal. As these characters started to disappear before our eyes, hearing the gasps and the shock and awe in that crowd was palpable. But just hearing the gasps with every single character, especially Black Panther, obviously, coming off of the huge success of Black Panther. That was a surreal experience that I hopefully will never forget. But top 5, if not top 3, most memorable experiences I've ever had in a movie theater. It was astounding. The fact that they actually had the cojones, that Disney let them do this. I mean, they knew where it was going with Endgame, obviously, but it was just to be there at that moment with all of our heroes disappearing. And then eventually all of us realizing, oh wait, they kept the core group from the first one, obviously, because it was going to be their send-off in Endgame. And then when the movie was over, and Thanos will return, I'll never forget a sold-out crowd shuffling out of that theater after that movie. And no one said anything. It was like they were all in mourning and depressed. It was like leaving a funeral. I've never experienced anything like it. So hopefully you got to experience Infinity War in a sold-out theater opening weekend. If not, I'm very thankful that I did. What an amazing film. Mission Impossible Fallout. Holy cow, what a great movie. The entirety of the Mission Impossible series, except for 2, is amazing. And the fact that we then got this new trilogy with part 3 being 2 parts to cap off the whole series is just... But Fallout, absolutely... And it was the first one to continue from the previous film. We had the great bad guy returning after he got captured instead of killed at the end of Rogue Nation. And then we have returning characters like Rebecca Ferguson. And I love that movie. And of course you have Henry Cavill, who is amazing in that, and the whole mustache gate thing was worth it. He needed his mustache in that movie. And we needed to have the Justice League so that we could get Zack Snyder's Justice League. But Mission Impossible Fallout, absolutely fantastic film. Love that movie. And of course, who can forget the arm cock? That doesn't sound right. But, you know, when Henry Cavill is cocking his arms in that... One of the most memorable bathroom fight sequences I've ever seen. But another one that comes to mind is True Lies. First Man, I remember seeing First Man in the IMAX. And I love that movie. It absolutely blew me away. But what stuck with me the most, spoiler alert, on history and this film, was when they're doing, like, the initial here we go before because he gets the spot because of what happens. But when the sequence with the fire and the deaths with the fire in the thing, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, that was so hardcore. And that stuck with me. And it's so memorable. When that fire ignites and there's nothing those guys can do but burn alive. Rough stuff. Godspeed to all those risking their lives and sacrificing their lives for things like going to space. Bohemian Rhapsody. I remember working at the movie theater. At the time I was crew, so I was on the register. And everyone was seeing Bohemian Rhapsody, Bohemian Rhapsody, Bohemian Rhapsody. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I kept hearing it in the Dolby Theater where it was for a few weeks, all loud and stuff, and everybody being so, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And they kept telling me, oh, did you see it? I'm like, no, I haven't seen it. And they're like, oh, you should see it. I'm like, yeah. I'm not really huge on Queen. I mean, I know their classic hits and all, but I'm not like a big Queen fan. I don't really need to see this movie. Boy, do I regret not seeing it in the Dolby, because when I eventually saw it, not only did I love that movie and thought it was brilliantly directed by Bryan Singer, who was then canceled and blacklisted for whatever reason, but give the guy credit for that amazing movie that he directed. And when I saw it, I was like, man, not only what an amazing film, but all of the sudden, after seeing that film, which I will always be in debt to it for, I became obsessed with Queen. And I dug into all of their discography and listened to their music non-stop for quite some time. And now they're regulars on my playlists. Like, they have so much amazing music. And like Radio Gaga. Like this movie introduced me to certain songs of theirs that I never knew about. And now they're some of my favorite songs of all time. So Bohemian Rhapsody knocked some sense into me to go, no, idiot. Queen is one of the greatest bands of all time. Oh, yes they are. Rest in peace, Freddie Mercury. You know what I'm saying? He was a genius. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, a collection of short stories by the Coen brothers. I just have to mention, it's not one of my top tier Coen brothers films. They are two of my favorite directors out there. But there's two memorable things about that movie specifically. Well, there's a lot of memorable things, but two things specifically that I must not discuss, but bring up. One of those stories stars Tom Waits. If that doesn't excite you, I feel sorry for you. If you don't know who Tom Waits is, and if you've seen that movie, he's the gold digger guy who gets the gold. I'm coming for you, Pocket. Tom Waits. You need to look up his music right now. Every movie, he's in a lot of movies, and every movie he's in is worth it, and he's perfect in it. But Tom Waits is one of the greatest musicians of all time, period. And what I believe to be the greatest lyricist of all time. He can write the heck out of some lyrics, and he's been doing it for many, many, many decades. Decades before I was born, for goodness sake. And here I am approaching 40. So, Tom Waits. Tom Waits, do yourself a freaking favor. Educate yourself on the music of Tom Waits. You're welcome. But it also, one of the stories, and it took me so long to remember where I heard this line. And I'm pretty sure it was from this movie, because they were walking out of a stagecoach. And there's a line in this movie that I use on a regular basis and stuck with me like super glue. And it's when someone says that they're going to do something, and then someone else kind of shrugs it off, haha. And they say, announcing one's plans is a good way to hear God laugh. Pretty much a way to say don't jinx yourself. But yeah, it's true. I'm going to do this tomorrow, and everything's going to be fine and dandy. Is it? Are you? You don't know what bumps in the road are going to be in front of you. So don't assume that everything's going to go the way. Like people often assume I'm going to live happily ever after, grow up, and die in my bed when I'm 80. I'm well aware, and I wish other people would be, but I'm well aware that I could drop dead at any moment. I could slip in the shower tomorrow morning. I could, unfortunately, in the country I live in, get shot at work tomorrow. I don't assume I'm going to get to see my son graduate high school because something tragic, God forbid, could happen to either one of us. So don't count your chickens, because nothing is a guarantee in this life. Value every moment. Not only could any moment be the last, not of yours necessarily, but with them or what have you, but it more than likely will be. To quote one of my favorite bands, Flyleaf, don't be shocked that people die. Be surprised you're still alive. And I live by mantras like that. The Happy Time Murders, I'm just going to mention because when I saw the trailer for that film, I was ecstatic on cloud nine. I'm a huge fan of puppets and puppetry. I love all kinds of puppet movies. I love Sesame Street. I love the Muppets. Although the Muppets aren't puppets, they're talking animals. That's the difference. Someone once asked Kermit the Frog, what's the difference between a puppet and a Muppet? And Kermit's response was, well, a puppet is controlled by a person as to where I am a talking frog. That's the difference between a puppet and a Muppet, just so you know. But the fact that we were going to get an R-rated hardcore for adults, probably thanks to Sausage Party, but a puppet movie, I was like, yes, sign me up. This is going to be amazing. That movie utterly disappointed me because it was not good. And I was very bummed. So that was the impact it had on me. Was that, oh man, you had so much potential, and this is probably the only time in history we were ever going to see an R-rated puppet movie, and they wasted it with bad jokes and poor quality. It's unfortunate. Today being the release of the new movie, I don't really have to talk about it, because you know by now, but I will mention Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. When that movie came out and I was working at the movie theater on a register at the time, it blew my mind, because at first it didn't do very well. But then I couldn't help but notice that everyone coming up to my register the next week, the week after that, the week after that, were buying tickets to this movie. The week after that, the week after that. It just, word of mouth spread. And it became this huge phenomenon, which we all know why now. But I saw that movie day one with my son, and I believe it was the opening logos that I immediately knew, oh my gosh, this is something really special. And I mean really special. This is going to be something I've never seen before, anything like it, and something that we'll never see anything like in this quality again. Of course, everyone's tried to copy it since. It did win a freaking Academy Award for Best Animated Film. But I don't need to explain why. I mean, Bagel. Bagel is the one example I'll give you. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is my personal favorite and what I believe is the greatest animated film ever made. The greatest Spider-Man film ever made. The greatest superhero film ever made. Period. All of those things. It's unique, it's original, it's, you know, it is what it is. We're getting 2 sequels. The second one came out today, which I would have taken my son to yesterday. But unfortunately, I am unable to do that right now. And I hope, the last time I got to talk to him, he was very excited about getting a Spot and Miles action figure from the store with his birthday money. And I would very much like the chance to take him to this film. We loved watching the first one together. And I was really looking forward to seeing this new one. It's one of my most anticipated films of the year, obviously. But I don't see myself watching the new one without my son. So I'm going to wait as long as it takes. Hopefully only a week, but it could be months. But I did go to work and get him those popcorn things. Got him a Gwen. I forgot to go yesterday. I was busy or emailing my lawyer and one night anyway. But I got him Gwen. Those things are going to be sold out by the time you see this anyway, by the way. If you find a popcorn container promoting anything at AMC, get it, because apparently they're going to be gone within days, and then they're going to be worth a lot of money. Dungeons and Dragons. The Cloverfield Paradox. The third in the Cloverfield trilogy. Yeah, that's right. The second one was a surprise, but the third one came out of left field. Apparently it was a movie already, and then they were like, we'll buy it and kind of tweak a couple of things and put it in our universe. Great. But I'll never forget watching the Super Bowl in 2018. And one of the Super Bowl commercials was an ad for a movie we'd never even heard of. Had no idea it existed. And it was called The Cloverfield Paradox. And we're like, what? And then the kicker was, bless you, Netflix, sometimes, that this movie is available now. It was literally them revealing this movie existed, revealing that it was a Cloverfield movie, and saying, oh, by the way, we just dropped it while you were watching the Super Bowl. You can watch it right now. And I was like, what? It's an okay movie. I'd probably say the worst of the three, but I do appreciate what it did and the certain subject matter it tackles, because in a way it explains where they came from. And it also very much so has a lot of similarities to the game Half-Life. If you know, you know. If you've played Half-Life and you've seen the Cloverfield Paradox, yeah, there's a lot of similarities there, isn't there? Yeah, there is. I guess I should censor myself, because that's what the movie did. Rooster Blockers? No, I think they call the movie Blockers. But it's got a picture of a cock-a-doodle-doo rooster. Because we all know what that title's called. When it's called Cockblockers. Because that's a term. It's not a gratuitous swear. I'm only bringing that up because it's an okay comedy, but I just have to remind myself and everyone that John Cena is hilarious. John Cena is hilarious. We discovered it in Trainwreck. I almost said Trainspotting. Trainwreck. I'm like, this guy's freaking hilarious when I saw that movie. Like, he was the best. He was the only memorable part, and by far the best part of Trainwreck. And then he went on to do more comedies. And I personally believe John Cena should do, much like Channing Tatum, John Cena should do not only more comedy, but only comedy. Because he's hilarious and has great genius comedic timing. He's phenomenal in comedy. Everything else, do comedy. Do comedy. If you can do comedy, stick with comedy, because comedy's way harder than drama. Trust me. Drama comes easier on here, but it's really hard to make people laugh. Unless you're a natural. But speaking of classic, I'll just mention Tag. I just thought Tag was a very clever concept, very well executed, with an amazing cast of dramatic actors that are very good at comedy. John Hamm, fantastic at comedy, but he's a rare, great at comedy, great at drama. Same with, bless him, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner. And of course, dude from New Girl. I need to remember his name already. He plays Peter Parker in the Spider-Verse. What's his name? You know. He's hilarious. So I just have to at least mention that movie. It was clever. I enjoyed it. I like that movie. Last and all, what's funny? The last video I did, 2017, was 4 movies. The least, by far, movies that I had to discuss. And it was the longest of all of these videos. What does that tell you? This will be shorter, and I'm talking about, 12 movies or something? Anyway. The most impactful film for me that was released in 2018 was Annihilation. I didn't know what I was getting into when I saw that movie, but not only is it visually stunning, brilliantly acted, somewhat introduced me to Jennifer Jason Leigh. See, I forgot her name when I was talking about Hateful Eight. Hateful Eight really introduced me to her, but then I was like, oh yeah, from Hateful Eight. And now I understand she's been in a lot of movies for a long time. Jennifer Jason Leigh's fantastic. It was my introduction to Tessa Thompson, who I'm literally watching right now in Selma. And then, of course, went on to be in the MCU, yada yada. You got your Natalie Portman, you got. But that movie, I'm Oscar Isaac. You had freaking Poe Dameron married to Padme Amidala in that movie. I'm like, what? But that movie is just brilliantly structured and a brilliant concept. I understand it's based on a book and it tweaked the ending a little bit. I liked its ending. Little ambiguous in a very good way, but and I'm talking the ending, but the like before that ending, I could watch that sequence near the end of that film every day. I mean, overall, everything about that movie is not only something I'd never seen before, but one of the best, some of the best, the best. But then you get to that ending. When she's in the, spoiler alert, when she's in the cave, when dude sets himself on, well, she finds the footage of dude sets himself on fire. We're not figuring out, oh, he was a clone. And then you go into the cave thing and there's that one of the greatest soundtracks I've ever heard. That specific track is one of the greatest things I've ever heard in cinema. Period. The end. It's been stuck in my brain ever since I saw that movie, and I listen to it, and I love it, and I watch that scene mainly because of that. There was that music. But then that becomes this metallic mirrored figure trying to become her, which is why it's mirroring her. And it's funny, she thinks it's attacking her. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Annihilation, go watch it right now. You can come back and finish this video. But, oh my gosh. It never attacks her. She was never really in danger. It was literally mimicking everything she did. When she runs for the door, what is on this hat? It runs for the door, which is why it ends up pressing up against her against the door. It's just doing what she's doing. It just happens to also be negating what she's doing because of their environment. Yada yada. It's so brilliant. Especially that scene with that alien creature mimicking her and then becoming her, and then her and him, and then they probably took over the world. But that sequence with that music and that creepy AF thing. Oh. In fact, the best way I can put it is by finally saying Annihilation is my favorite science fiction film of all time. Hands down, period, the end. That movie blew my mind and does every time I see it. And I absolutely love it. And holy crap. Holy crap! And I saw it in theaters with my brother. And this was... It might have been right before I was working at the movie theater, because I believe I got the job at the movie theater in November of 2018. Yep. So I think this came out shortly before I worked there. So I didn't understand the policy yet, but I don't think the policy applied because I think it was earlier in the day. But we have a policy where no children under 6 in an R-rated film after 6. However, I don't think it was after 6, and so we have that policy so that grown-ups can go see an R-rated film without worrying about crying babies or kids freaking out or what have you. But apparently you could still take a 6 or 7-year-old. I don't think this kid was that young. This kid was probably maybe 7 or 8. Yeah, so I had a guy sitting in the same row as me, a few seats down to my right. And the only conclusion I could come to, I got the impression that he was babysitting a family member. And that he wanted to go to the movies and see this movie or what have you. So, since he was stuck babysitting, he just dragged the kid to it. The kid didn't seem to be there to see a movie. They seemed to be forced to. But there was this little kid in this movie. And I'll never forget being like, man, somebody took this kid to this movie? This movie's a little hardcore. It's whatever, but, maybe I wouldn't take someone that young. And then we got to the scene where Oscar Isaac's stomach is ripped open with a knife, and then they check out his moving intestines. And not only am I like, what? While watching this sequence, my brain is acknowledging the fact that there's like a frickin' 7-year-old over here being forced to endure this. Like, you're the best judge of character as a parent of your kids. Show them whatever. I remember when I showed my 6 or 7-year-old, well, I didn't show him, but I was watching Alien, the first one. And the chest burster came out. It's the famous chest burster scene. And my son caught a glimpse of the TV when that happened, and I was like, oh no! And his response was, aw, how cute! So I'll never forget that. You know your kids better than anybody, but I wouldn't have taken someone that young to a movie featuring someone going, check this out! Ripping open their guts and being like, ooh, look at all this! But Annihilation is by far number 1 of that year because, like I said, it's my favorite science fiction film of all time. It's one of the greatest things. And then that director went on to make another movie recently, and I was like, sweet, the guy who did Annihilation! And Men destroyed my soul. Don't ever watch Men. Great movie. Very well done. One of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. Maybe we'll talk about it in that future video. But for now, it's Annihilation. I need to go watch that scene right now. Okie dokie.